Welcome to Art Traffic. Let's get going. I guess I would have to ask you to just characterize the LA art scene for yourself. Where is it located?
I can tell you where I feel like it's located.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not in the low-income communities of LA.
Yeah. Okay, I'm really glad we caught this artist, Elmer Guevara, at this moment in his career. He's in that year after his bachelor's degree and possibly looking at a master's. I think it's a moment some of our listeners can really relate to and get some great information from. Here we go with Elmer Guevara. I think almost everyone that I know that doesn't speak Spanish that says Che Guevara.
Oh, there. Yeah, I mean,
Right?
that sounds pretty good.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, that's not bad.
That doesn't sound good.
That's not bad.
That was very
It's not
generous
bad.
of
It's
you, I
not
feel
bad.
like. So give us a little bit of background about just your upbringing. We'll start in the begining. There's
Right.
Elmer.
Yeah, so I grew up in the South Los Angeles area, better known as South Central. So I was born in 1990, and as a kid, I was growing up through the late 90s and the early 2000s. And so early on, I got influenced by a lot of graffiti writers who were writing in the city, and I took part in it for quite a bit of time through my teenager years. And we used to ditch school and bus hop, basically where we would hop into one line, do our thing real quick, and then hop out and zigzag throughout the city. So I got to know the city really good through the train system and the bus system in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I did it with a lot of friends who were going to high school together with me. Yeah, and I had a couple of influences early on too, from one of my friends who was growing up in the same neighborhood, being Jimmy Castro. So he was doing graffiti at the time as well, and it just amazed me what he was bringing out on these black books. At the time, I was really young, so it was amazing what I was looking at. So he went on to become a tattoo artist now,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can check out his work as well on Instagram. It's Jims_Inc. Yeah, and so as I got more into the graph community, I also met a group of people who were taking what they were doing in the street and putting it onto canvases and panels, and the first person that I ran into that I got inspired right away was my friend Mario Gutierrez. He goes by Aroma, and I remember going up to his apartment on 51st Street, closer to Slauson, and we were chilling there sipping 40 ounces and kicking it, and so he was going to town on these canvases, and then at the time I was so stuck on just painting graffiti. I didn't see anything coming out of it. Honestly, I never thought I'd end up painting later.
You were pretty much like rattle cans at that moment.
Right. So that was it for me. It was just painting out, staying out late, and so when I seen him doing paintings, I was like, man, it amazed me so much where I wanted to try it, and honestly, from then I was just kind of plugged. Yeah.
So then what made you decide from there to go, I'm going to go the academic route? Were you always a pretty academic person growing up and it fit real nice for you, or?
Even though I was out a lot, I was not going to high school a lot, I tried community college at East LA College in ELAC, and I mean, once I got there and I had the liberty to choose what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
it was a lot better than the high school program where it's this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
The high school I went to didn't have much of art classes.
No.
So I remember taking one drawing class through the 4 years. And
Yeah, you grew up in this real weird time where there's this arts are totally defunded, but at the same time we have the giant explosion in street art, which I think are not unrelated. But you were also just talking about earlier graph artists going into doing work on panels and canvases.
Right.
That also really kind of exploded with your generation as well.
Yeah, I mean, I see it a lot more. A lot of the people who were painting walls and doing street stuff is actually doing studio work now. So yeah, I'm sure it kind of just grew into it. At first, I felt like it wasn't much accepted as art because it was in the street.
Not at all.
But
I think it's only accepted to a certain level as well right now.
Right.
Like it's like the shows that you see out there are they're like one-offs almost. There are a few galleries who are like dedicated to street art.
Right.
But then I don't think those galleries have been really totally accepted into the mainstream of what we think of as like the fine art world either.
Yeah, I can definitely see the barrier for sure. You go to some that are like strictly on like the fine art aspect, and then there's some here like down the street here, the container yard, so which is all graffiti based.
Well,
yeah, for sure. I think it's still very like there's a barrier there for sure.
Yeah. What? So you end up going to Cal State Long Beach.
Yeah, so I transferred there from ELAC. So I did 2 years at ELAC, and I transferred over there to Long Beach State.
Yeah, and I'm going to take this moment to thank Liz and Cynthia over at Flatline for hooking you up with us. We're like really stoked that we got to meet you and come to your studio that's here in the downtown LA Arts District.
For sure.
What can you tell us about where your work is at right now? And we'll have we'll mention your Instagram and all that stuff, so people who are listening right now can kind of follow along and look at some of the imagery.
Right. So I guess my goal when I got to Long Beach was to create some form of hybridity with what I was already doing, which was like graffiti-based related art, and then the figurative art. And so when I got to Long Beach, it was also separated there in the BFA program. There was 2 tracks. One was contemporary track, and the other was a figurative track. So I've always been fond of like analyzing anatomy and trying to paint the figure. So I took the figure track, and I guess after that, that's kind of like what my goal was, to build some kind of hybrid between both, where it's like it's figure-based, but it's also gestural, and it has some kind of, well, it's just not reading a traditional painting, I guess. Yeah. I was trying to deviate from that in a way. Yeah, and then from there, I started to, I was trained academically at the school there, so I tried to just utilize that and create my own language with it.
Yeah, and you can really see that in the canvases, even while we're just here in the studio right now, as I'm looking around. It's a great studio, by the way.
Thank you.
Awesome light and everything. And
yeah, well, I got to thank my colleagues, Juliana Bustillo and Tito Whitney Lake. They're the ones who found this place first, and then they kind of told me and my friend Josh Vasquez. And so I'm blessed to be here. For sure, it's a blessing.
Yeah. And so, just looking around at the work, too, you definitely can see that traditional technique that's going on in the work. There's a lot of detail in it. There's glazing. There's under and over painting. There's all kinds of those traditional techniques, but compositionally is where you really start to try to fracture I think the frame. So talk a little bit maybe about your subject matter that you're dealing with in these pieces right here.
Okay, so I feel like, well, my work is like, if I could break it down, it's condensed into 2 bodies, and one of them being about like my family's acculturation process coming to the United States in the 80s. I'm first generation American born here, so my parents came in the 80s from El Salvador because of the Civil War.
Yeah.
So that's always been a issue there that I've always wanted to investigate, but haven't had much luck because they don't really talk about it a whole lot. But I do read a lot on it, and so that's kind of where that came from. The first thing was I was trying to depict their transition into the social structure here in Los Angeles, or just in the United States in general. But yeah, so I paint. This painting here is of my uncle, and he fought in the war over there, and I'm trying to like show his transition up to where he's at now. You can see symbolism of the maps of his route to the United States. I've done a few paintings of like my grandmother.
And then there's definitely like this LA street scene on one side, and then what looks like maybe it's El Salvador on the other side, and yeah.
So I'm trying to show you like the differences in the urban scapes.
Yeah, and this looks like a really like you do a lot of pre-work before a painting. I can tell just by looking at like the drawing that goes into it and the design.
Right.
Is your work like that? Is your work very planned out before it goes to the canvas, or do you leave room?
Well, the way I do it is it's photo based and it's collage based. So I used a few computer programs to set up a structure or like a sketch that's like the start of it.
Yeah.
But it's usually pretty simplistic to where, like, for example, for this one, it was just a structure of him and holding the M16 and him going like this with his hand. But that's all collage together. Everything else, it just kind of came from as I was going. I try to like not plan out so much, because then it kind of, I really enjoy the whole sense of it just discovering itself as it's going. It's building up, you know.
Right.
So yeah, it starts off pretty simple, and then it just becomes its own thing after. Yeah.
Have you ever found with painting, and this is just maybe something that happens in my own personal practice, but I'm wondering if it happens for you too, because I feel like I can see something in this. There kind of are no mistakes. It's sort of like mistakes are just good underpainting. That's kind of a way that I would have to put it, like the layering process of painting over painting over painting.
Right.
Like gives you something, a richness or a surface that you don't get if the painting is just like perfectly executed first time. Just
right. Yeah, I like the whole. I like to feel that like it being like an element of surprise to some extent. Like,
yeah.
Just going back to like, I feel like if it's too well planned, it's kind of like you're just copying in a way.
Yeah.
So I try to. Like for this one, I can tell you like the street light posts, the electric posts that are there. That just came about like as I was painting. It wasn't planned or anything, but I don't think I'd be able to plan something that far ahead and paint it, honestly. I'd have to just like, I just like that it starts off with a simple sketch and it just builds into its own language or its own image in a way.
Yeah, and what about that feeling too of just being in the moment of painting? I mean, there's something something a little bit intoxicating about it. It's kind of euphoric.
Right. I really seek for those moments, because it doesn't uninterest me or doesn't bore me.
Yeah.
So yeah, just knowing that I don't know what's gonna happen here, but it
a
might
little
work
exciting.
or not work.
Yeah.
Like that little feeling feels really good. So you try to develop it, and then if it makes me happy, then I'll keep it. If not, then just it gets painted over. But yeah, I seek for those like moments, man, when you just get into it, and yeah, definitely just find some kind of discovery there.
So I guess this is really kind of like, what do you see as being next for you? And I know you're at this like, you're kind of at this big moment right here where it's like, you're building this body of work. Where do you see the, I guess what's the end or the goal, or is there one, or is it just like the joy of making the work, or like?
So I guess the second body of work that I'm working on is based on the homelessness in the greater Los Angeles area and how densely it's been growing.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible.
Right. So the goal on that for me is to finish this body, which I'm one painting away. It's that really big one there that I haven't started. And just trying to show that. But I also have a couple of I have a couple of other ideas, and it's usually based on trying to portray people who aren't represented, right? Like in our society in a way. And that's kind of how that came about with the homelessness. So yeah, for sure, I think the next goal for me is to try to like seek a different group. And I've thought about possibly portraying individuals who have immigrated to the United States and have found certain type of occupations here, being from gardening to construction to, and there's just certain things that I've worked with certain people like that, like for money, you know, and it's kind of just, I think their stories are also like one that needs to be heard. So for sure, just people who aren't represented in our society. I seek for those type of groups.
Yeah.
And trying to show their story through painting.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a way for you to bring a group or a person into the gallery space or into the consciousness of an audience that wouldn't normally be exposed to them.
Right, and to open up a dialogue about people who aren't spoken for, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's the main goal on all that for the certain groups that I choose to depict.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting one. This is a question that I've never. I don't really think anyone's ever answered on my podcast before.
Okay. I'll
but
try.
I'm interested, and it's totally actually from your perspective completely. So there's no wrong answer or anything like that.
Okay.
It's just that like when I ask this question, people all of a sudden start talking about something else. And I don't know why it is yet. And I don't know. So this is maybe because there is no answer. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll
try it out.
All right. Give it a shot, man. So I guess I would have to ask you to just like characterize the LA art scene for yourself. Like, what is it about? Where is it located? You know, like, what is this thing?
Okay. I can tell you where I feel like it's located.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not in the low income communities of LA.
Yeah.
For sure. So I feel like I'm in a space now where I'm pretty close to it, in terms of it being near venues that house and Worth is down the street. So there's a lot of things happening in downtown.
Yeah.
And I feel that from there it jumps into like the west side, like Culver City, and farther into Santa Monica. Yeah. So it's definitely like, I mean, it's no hidden secret that it's in the upper class portions of LA. Yeah. As far as like where I see myself in it, I mean, I'm just finishing school and all, so I feel like I'm not necessarily a player yet. Yeah. And I'm trying to work my way there, you know, but I do go into these venues all the time to check out what's happening and to stay relevant with the work that people are producing. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely a scene there, I think, in those areas for sure. And it's like trying to stay close to that. It's probably a good thing, I would say. Yeah. So I'm really, really interested in your perspective on that particular question too, because your perspective might be the most relevant. Because I don't know if artists actually know the moment in which they've made it, or the moment in which they're like, oh, now I'm the center of the art world, or it seems to be sometime right before they break into it is the moment when they were the closest to it. It's like it's kind of this moving target type of a situation with the art world at any one moment, and it seems to more or less like, I feel like people don't step into the center of the art world at any one moment. I feel like the art world just kind of coalesces around them. And so like when I think of so interesting case is we just did an interview with Meg Cranston,
And I asked Meg about what it was like to be at Rosamund Felsen at this like really pivotal time. It happened to be that she was represented by that gallery when also like Mike Kelly and Paul McCarthy and like huge
Big
like
names.
the giant names that you think
yeah.
of, and they were all in there together at the same time. And she was like, well, it wasn't any one time because, you know, Mike Kelly had just left there right when I was getting there. And Paul was there, but, like, it wasn't as if, like, I think sometimes, like, a gallery might try to frame it as if everybody was there at the same time and they were, like, chums, maybe,
Right.
you know, and like everyone's like, oh, we're a movement together, because it makes it. I think it's just sounds more attractive. Maybe it's easier to sell the work, but for us as the artists, we may not know. Like, so in Meg's case, I think she was just like, it didn't
Just
really
kind of
feel that way to
happened,
me.
right?
Like I was represented by that gallery, and it was like a big deal at that
Right.
time. But like, it was.
Yes, definitely. I feel like it's not an overnight thing. You know,
No.
it's just kind of like it.
Or you may not even know when you're there.
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah.
It's, I don't know. It's an interesting
For
point
sure.
point of inflection, if it kind of like exists, or if it's just a selling point. You know.
True.
I wouldn't know either. I've never been the center of the art world, so I
Same
can't
here.
I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would just like to say though that you completely answered that, like, way closer to like an actual answer.
I tried.
Than anybody.
Honestly, it's just the honest view of it from me. You know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I can give you.
That's totally what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So what else do we need to know about your work, or what else would an audience need to know about your work? Say if you're like, before someone were to come to see some of your work, like, what would you want them to know?
Right. So I spoke a bit about like the whole acculturation of my parents, but I wanted to speak a little on the other series I'm working on.
Yeah.
And then that's with the homeless.
Uh-huh.
So I had just picked up a place like the last year of my undergrad at Cal State Long Beach, where I was renting out a room in a building, and that was basically my studio there before I moved here. And so I used to cross the 51st Street overpath between Figueroa and Broadway in South LA, and it was basically a tent community there.
Yeah.
Of people who were living there, and
Yeah.
it just amazed me how much. And it was right in the cross street of a freeway entrance for the 110 North, coming towards downtown, and so it was just so much there, and like it just every morning I would just bug out how people would just drive past it, and like, you know, it was almost like there was nothing there, you know. So it just blew my mind, and I started to see it more move into like LA, closer to my neighborhood, and I would assume it's because of the gentrification that's happening all around the city, that people are moving into more like the low class part of the city, the working class areas. So I decided to like make a series on homeless individuals, and I got rejected quite a bit as I approached a lot of people who thought I was trying to harass them or just bothering them. So I did happen to meet quite a bit of people after trying for a while, and so what I would do, I'd take my camera and, you know, usually just bike around or try to take like a old clothing that I was about to throw out instead of just giving it to someone. So I'd take stuff with me, and then I just basically tell them like what I was up to, you know. And I conducted interviews, some of them that I recorded a bit with my phone, and others that I just jot down notes. But I took a lot of photographs while I was speaking to them, and then them being in their own surroundings and their own shacks that they built out of wood or whatever they found, you know.
Yeah.
And so I interviewed them, and then with the photos, I came back and I collaged them, and then I created collage-based compositions and later just painted them.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I added symbols that I took from the photos that I found important to things that they were seeing or pastimes that they had done when they were younger, and then I asked them about how they ended up in their situation, right? So I was trying to like just investigate human condition and the identity of, and the change and things that changed their identity that's put them where they are now. So basically, that's what I was doing until now, where I'm getting ready to finish up the series.
What were some of the stories that you heard that struck you that made you like, yeah, I need to make this piece based on this person?
Right. So there was one that I can tell you for sure that I really enjoyed a lot. Was his name was Carlos, and he was living on that 51st overpass, and it struck me as I was going by there because he was painting. He was painting like Pollock-ish stuff, abstract paintings. So I stopped and I talked to him. Like it's just right away you see someone painting, you want to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I went over there and I talked to him for a bit, and he was just telling me how when he was younger, he grew up in LA as well. His mother had took him out to like Palmdale, like try to get him out of the neighborhood during the 80s because of the crack epidemic. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of told me how he wasn't able to like stay away for long. Like he needed to be in LA where his home was, and he ended up getting into some trouble with the authorities, and basically that's how he ended up where he was at the moment. But yeah, we talked for a bit, and it was just cool to know him. And it's crazy because some of them will invite me into their place. But so it was just like I told him what I was up to, and me trying to represent and show people, the awareness on issues that are like literally just around us, but no one's like even paying attention to things.
Yeah, now it's time for side hustles, boys and girls. I think I primed you. I think you're the first maybe person I've ever really primed for side hustles in a proper kind of a way, so you understand what it is before I start talking about it.
Right, no, I do. So I'm sure you've heard a lot, like people who make art do the weirdest sometimes.
We do the craziest shit.
Right, so I've always been pretty handy with my hands, so I've done from general construction to painting houses to a bit of landscape with my father. I worked retail for a while. I even folded towels by the beach, and just trying to get through school and like continue the production of painting, and buying supplies and whatnot. But I've done a bit of everything, man. Like in terms of like building stuff, for sure. Like I've always enjoyed it too, just using materials to frame stuff.
So do you build your own stretchers?
I have before, but some are bought as well. So this panel here, I built it. I built this workbench, or this table here, and it's
nice looking too. It's sturdy.
Yeah, I have a pallet on top, so that's a lid. Yeah, so I have a mixing pallet there, and a lot of it's just kind of from the knowledge I've gotten from just trying a bunch of jobs. Like I learned to frame stuff. I learned to make stretcher bars and all that stuff too, just from I've been doing like the last 6 months I've been working with a fencing crew where we build like decks and pergolas and fences, wooden fences, and so a lot of that I've like got from just learning to cut and do angles to building frames for my paintings to like helping friends build stuff, so a little bit. I've definitely done a little bit of everything, and I'm like always open-minded to try new stuff, just because you never know what you can get out of it. I don't just see it as like I need to make some money. Sometimes I do, but
everybody has to make money,
right? And so another thing too is like while I'm working, I'm usually like either working with wood or sometimes cement. So I try to do like samples of things that I can incorporate in my paintings, or somehow like all day while I'm working, I'm thinking of ways I can use this thing I'm cutting or this thing I'm mixing to incorporate it. So you can see on this painting here, there's a bit of stucco there. And so I do samples on stucco where I mix it with linseed oil and paint and try to attach it or bind it to paintings. Or and that one too, if you see the wood, it's actual wood that's chipped off of fire-rated wood. So it's just working with wood and I just try to use it somehow within painting, if it makes sense,
Right.
Yeah, and then I do a little bit of sign painting as well. I do some murals for shops. I also design a little bit for my girlfriend's clothing brand. So she's a rapper. She goes by Belle the Wonder. You can check out her Instagram as Belle_9, and her YouTube channel as well. So she has a website as well, bellethewonder.com, where you can peep out some of the clothing that I've helped design.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, just literally,
It's the art life in
Right,
general.
right.
It's like you fall into things and you explore things,
Right.
and it's like it's sort of like it's just a side effect of being open-minded. I think.
Right, yeah, and just literally just trying to like take it as like it being like some sort of class or something I can gain from it, Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Every experience has something in it for me. So I since I hop around a lot through jobs, I don't get bored too often with them. So
Yeah.
yeah, so just try to pick up as much as I can from it.
Yeah, and you're like you're one of those people that's just going for it hard right now. It's kind of like trying to like keep an apartment and a studio and like all that stuff going all at the same time is like it's a juggling act, and it's like
For sure.
Yeah, it's like I think for me, like I don't know, I just respect it. It's like it's
Thank
great.
you.
It's just great to see somebody who's just all like, if I'm gonna be about it, I'm gonna be all the way about it.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, it keeps life exciting because you never know where the next buck will come from, So I mean, sometimes there'll be some dry spells, and then next thing you know, you're like you have a crop of money that you just made from doing something,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Okay, and so for like our last segment, we like to, because artists all know artists and stuff like that. Who would you like to hear from on a podcast that would be long format where they can just kind of talk about their work?
Right. Before anything, once again, I'm gonna give out a big shout out to the ladies at Flatline for allowing me for this to happen. But I guess if I pick somebody, it'd definitely have to be my friend. He's actually a studio mate here. His name is Josh Vasquez. He's also an LA-based artist from the Pico Union District. And he recently shown at Flatline as well. And his work is also very LA-based, but in a more non-representational aspect of painting. But yeah, he showed a few paintings there at Flatline where there were sort of like close-ups of certain site-specific areas around his neighborhood, like Pico Union. So to me, when I would see his work, it was almost working like as a preservation of a changing neighborhood that's really changing because they're getting hit with the whole gentrification thing happening there.
Yeah.
So I see them as like him just trying to preserve those things that are from that neighborhood, because I feel like every neighborhood has a distinct look or something.
Yeah.
So for sure, I really admire his work. He works really hard and stays very relevant, going to shows and everything like that. And sometimes he takes me along with him. But yeah, you can check out his Instagram too. It's Joshy Burr, so JOSHYBEHR, Joshy Burr.
All right, we'll do that.
For sure.
As fans of the show, I feel like maybe you could help us get him on the show. Like,
yeah, for sure. I didn't
that might not be
I didn't
hard
tell
for you.
him. I didn't tell him I was gonna like put him out there on the spot like that.
Uh-oh.
But I'm sure he'll be
Sorry,
fine with
Josh,
it.
we're coming for you now.
Yeah.
It's over.
I'm sure he'll be
The
fine
beast
with
has
it.
been unleashed. We're gonna barrage you with emails until you submit.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine with it. Yeah, he's a good guy.
All right, cool. Anybody else?
If I can pick another person, it would definitely be my professor that I met at ELAC, but has always just helped me out with a lot of things through life. And his name's Sergio Teran, and his Instagram is Sergio Teran Arts, which is SERGIOTERAN Arts. You can check out his work. It's always been very inspiring to me since I met him at ELAC. I took him for an oil painting class, which was one of the first times I ever painted with oils. And he's always been in, like, around, like, helping me out with things. Every time I have a question, I try to go to him, and he's always there for me with that. So big shout out to him. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on Art Traffic with us, and
Cool. Thank you, man.
Looking forward to getting back and editing this episode. I think we got some really cool stuff.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks to Calvin for making it happen after his he worked his other job till 3 a.m. and then got out here to capture some audio for us. So
I have coffee there, man. If you want
always
some.
always the stalwart of the show. Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Good discussion with Elmer about his story, work, and the location of the LA art scene. Thanks to Elmer for being on the podcast, and thanks to Liz at Flatline for recommending Elmer. Liz, this one's for you, sister. Challenge made. Challenge accepted. Challenge crushed, okay? If you have someone you'd like to hear on Art Traffic, hit us up at ArtTrafficLA on Instagram or email us at arttraffic@thomasadamsart.com. Subscribes and follows help us out, so if you like the show, please hit the appropriate buttons.